Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. You can listen to full shows online at WCBE.org. I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
I'm John DeSando.
This is Cinema Classics.
Yes, it is.
I got a name for you.
Okay.
Pozzi Ponzaroli.
How about that for a director? I think this is his or her first time.
Pozzi Ponzaroli. Yeah.
And I have to say, for Old Henry, there's nothing old about this new movie on Prime.
Yeah, well, there is something old about it, right? It's a Western.
Yes.
So here comes a guy, this Pozzi Ponzaroli guy, comes out swinging out of the gate with this old school Western,
Yeah.
not revisionist really in any way, starring Tim Blake Nelson.
How about that? Usually plays a yokel.
A yokel, a goofball, somebody.
Right.
Even when he's played menacing, which he has, it always comes with that, how can you take this little guy seriously sort of vibe, you know?
Good example, Buster Scruggs, do you think?
Buster Scruggs, yeah. Among other things, I mean, this is a guy that's been around for a long time,
Yeah.
so he definitely wears, you know, his face is worn. He carries that, hard-lived life, the lines of a
Yeah.
hard-lived life in his face. So the premise of Old Henry is the titular farmer lives on this property alone with his son, and they come across an unconscious guy
Yeah.
and a bag full of money, and of
Yeah.
course, you know, trouble ensues.
Some typical tropes. It's the stranger who changes things. You know, this is life-changing.
Right.
And the farmer, you know, he's got a past that was only distributed very, very gently.
Mhm.
So we know exactly who he is by the end.
Right.
But we don't know that. And that's, I think, part of the beauty and
Of
the
course,
tension.
yeah. You know, what we're getting is this is not an intimidating figure. You know, Tim Blake Nelson does not cut a menacing figure. So slowly, as you know, these bad guys led by Stephen Dorff,
Oh,
in a really great character turn.
if Nelson is good, Dorff is good.
Wow.
He is.
Yeah, so he's great.
He's such a bad boy.
And as his little army of villains kind of descends upon the farm, we gather that Old Henry is not to be trifled with. and that kind of sets in motion the real, you know, themes of the movie. Like, is this guy who he says he is? How can this little guy be such a tough nut to crack?
Things are not always as they appear.
Right.
I love the moment when these bad boys who are lined up, like the bad seven, out there, turn around.
Mm-hmm.
The first indication, you won't even think of it, but I think it's such a nice touch. They know who he is.
Well, they know that he's not to be
Yeah,
messed with.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And I love that scene too, because it does give you a little taste of maybe, you know, we don't always, when we look at westerns, we're not watching a western for a history lesson usually, but it does give you a little taste of how, when confronted with someone who knew what they were doing with a gun, you didn't mess with them, because, you know, in Unforgiven, and there are many shades
Yes.
of Unforgiven here.
Yeah.
This is very derivative of that movie. But, you know, the lesson in Unforgiven is this gunplay, it's not what you think it is. It's a tricky business. If somebody knows what they're doing and taking their time with it, you're in trouble. You don't just pull your gun on anybody.
Yeah.
So the fact that these guys have him outnumbered, but they're still cautious enough to turn away from him, I think gives us a glimpse into some of that, you know, that kind of revisionist, Unforgiven thinking.
And don't you think just a bit absurd, even as good as he might be? There are too many of those, you know. But I mean, we accept that.
Right.
Yeah.
The point is, one or two of them will die, and so they're not going to
Yes.
risk that
Yes,
in
right.
that moment.
Yes, right.
They're going to play their hand another way.
I think too the relationship between father and son is interesting, and it's a motif used so much these days in non-Western films, heroic films, in which there's a connection between father and child.
Yeah.
And in this case, how can you out there grow up as a human being, as a young man, as a teen. When nobody else is around, there's nothing but pigs. It's a pretty rough existence. Dad is taciturn. Dad's not telling you about his past. I mean, it's a really very nice tension between father and son.
Yeah, it's really well done. And again, like Unforgiven, there's this, tendency of the kid to like diminish the father, right? He's a farmer. How can he?
Right.
And the kid is like romanticizing gunfighting, and he wants a pistol. He wants to take the pistol out. He can handle himself, but you know that he can't. And he's looking at his dad, who is this diminutive little yokel, right, with this snaggle tooth.
Yes,
He's got this crazy little snaggle tooth, and you keep wondering what that's about, and then there's a payoff, right?
And one of the different things about this, as to other roles that he's played, I think you kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but is the lack of humor in his character.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently, the kind of yokel that he plays it can be played for laughs.
Right.
And there's no laughs in this one. I love that.
Right.
I mean, he is homely as hell.
Yeah.
He looks like he's just hiding out like a scared rabbit, and yet one of the tropes that I love about westerns is there's always that sense of impending doom, and the landscape allows it to kind of just gently settle in, where you know something really big is going to happen.
This is what I was telling you the other day. We were talking about this. One of the appeals of westerns for me, or great western, especially when there's a great western hero at front and center, is, to me, it plays like a bit of competency porn. Competency porn is usually like when someone is handling like technical stuff deftly, like there's a problem and somebody's rerouting the trains and blah blah blah. But in westerns, to me, I think you can't watch a western without looking at it thinking, how would I handle myself in this situation, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that feeling creeps in even when you're watching the farming bits, when you know that you're all alone out there and you're chopping your firewood for the day or whatever, we start to, it lures you into this thinking about your own standing in the world, and whether or not you could handle yourself alone, right? And then you introduce the bad guys, or the danger element.
So true. And I think paralleling our movement west, the danger, whether we would ever have had the courage to do what people did in wagons going west, claiming some land, homesteading. It has all of that underneath it as well. So that's why I think I love the Western. I love it for its landscapes, and I love it for its danger, and I love also for what it brings out.
Right.
In those who take the chance.
Yeah. And we see these sort of conflicts play out. We see good guy, bad guy conflicts play out against so many different backgrounds these days. Urban, rural, but they're all modern. Sometimes it's sci-fi, right? There's something beautiful about the starkness of westerns.
Yes.
And this kind of human drama playing out against these fast vanishing landscapes.
Yes. One of the standard shots, which would come from John Ford on up, is being framed in the doorway. The camera behind you, and your future coming up over the horizon. I love that shot. It still thrills me.
Yeah.
Even though it's not John Wayne, he's completely the opposite of John Wayne standing in the door. But it's just every bit as dangerous.
That's 10.
Good. Okay.